Vice President Vivek Ramaswamy. You and I on Fox and Friends Weekend did an off the wall on the role of a vice president. And I think, we both agree that maybe historically prior to Trump, the role of a vice president was designed to deliver an electoral victory. I don't think a vice president does much to swing the popular vote, but they can deliver a state. The idea was to pick somebody from a swing state, a purple state like Ohio, and say, put them on the vice presidential tickets, and that person would deliver a necessary state. That's not really what Trump did with Pence. And so I'm curious, as you look at Vivek, I'm not sure that he delivers anything to Trump electorally, but that might not matter when you think about who Trump might pick for vice president.
Trump picked Pence not because of where he was from, but because of what he represented to the base and the country. He represented a consistent conservative over decades when there were a lot of questions amongst Republicans about where the core of Donald Trump was, right? And so Pence solidified that in the view of conservatives. Totally different in 24. It's not that Donald Trump looked uncomfortable on stage, but it almost looked like he had a peer up there. I just think there's too much there in Vivek. I think he would be the heir apparent to Trump on day one of his presidency, and that's the last thing Donald Trump wants. So when I look at the criteria, it's not geography, it's not shoring up a conservative base, it's who's someone who can add value in a general election where you're going to need independent voters, and then who's someone who's not going to immediately overshadow in the conversation of 2028. That's what I'd look for if I was surrounding Donald Trump right now.
Where does that take you? Who would you pick for VP?
The name I would pick right now is Tulsi Gabbard.
Will and Greg, man, it's awesome to watch you guys interact, but you are so wrong about whether Vivek might be or should be the VP.
Trump is a one-man band. He just is. You know what you're dealing with. He doesn't want a posse or a duo.
Interesting point about, Trump doesn't want a duo or a posse. So the question is, do people who support Donald Trump want more Donald Trump, or do they want Donald Trump plus an invisible second fiddle?
So whoever's coming in is going to be behind the scenes, to the side, taking on some tasks, taking bullets for him, making envoys to groups that maybe he can't reach the same way. That's why I like a non-conventional pick like a Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, again, that could be too cute, but it can't be Vivek. It's too much alpha. And I don't think he would want it.
One of the phrases that I just heard was it's too much alpha. I think people want more alpha. They want strong leadership. They want to take apart the swamp. And I think that the energy and youth of Vivek, when coupled with the perceived endurance and sort of brute power that Donald Trump has evinced in the past, I think people will see that as an absolute knockout tag team fighter combination.
If Roe v. Wade is a bad general election issue for you, she's a pretty interesting pick to continue to soften that inside the White House, because you've already overturned Roe v. Wade. So what else do you have to show? And then she's not going to be the Republican nominee in 2028. So that conversation kind of stops right there. That's my thought.
There's two things that we can compare and contrast together. They don't necessarily have to be separate things, but we can compare and contrast them. One approach is a Trump-Gabbard ticket. And what does that look like? Let's do the big tent philosophy, right? Let's use Tulsi Gabbard on the ticket from a political calculation perspective to bring in, we hope, those who are opposed to Donald Trump or would be opposed to the Republican Party. And so they would say, you've got to throw Tulsi Gabbard in there because you want to appeal to independents or people from the other party and bring them over to vote for Donald Trump. The problem is that Donald Trump will be so dominant on that ticket, you're not going to bring over a lot of people. You're not going to bring over people who are either going to sit out the election because they're skeptical because of the perceived baggage and the constant ongoing friction that he has to put up with in order to be effective. And regardless of how much people like him and support him, that friction has an effect on his effectiveness as in the role of president if he's elected again. So on the one hand, you have a Tulsi Gabbard VP position, and you have Trump as the strong primary contender, and you have a question mark because you know that he has only 4 years to accomplish what you're hoping he can accomplish. Let's contrast that with Vivek as the vice presidential candidate. And what I would say to that combination, a Trump-Vivek ticket, is if the two can figure out the chemistry, then I think it is a huge win-win-win to have Vivek Ramaswamy as a VP. There are tons of dynamics that go with that, right? There are tons of dynamics that support that approach. One of them is you have a lot of people who fall in this sort of place where if it's between Donald Trump and anybody that the Democrats put up, they're going to vote for Donald Trump, but they're not going to be super excited about it. That group of people will vote for Trump because they, and I would put myself in this category, right? We don't want a socialist form of government. However, we're true principled conservatives, and we see part of what happened during the Trump presidency as a massive growth of our national debt. We see the continued presence of Anthony Fauci. We see this dissonance in what President Trump accomplished. And the way that I explain this to myself is that Mr. Trump just had, the decision cycle as president has to be crazy, right? You have to make all these decisions all the time. You have to trust on advisor input. You just got to do that. And so he had bad advisors and he kept listening to them. And he had bad inputs and he kept listening to them. And in the words of Vivek, he got duped. Now, nobody wants to have it said about them that they got duped because it seems to indicate that they didn't know either who to pay attention to or what to pay attention to, or that they could be easily misled. But if duped means deceived, if it means that basically people lied to President Trump or gave him the best advice they could give him, but it was still the wrong advice, the result was we increased the national debt, we increased the size of the government, we certainly increased the influence of the government under Anthony Fauci. There's a really troublesome aspect of the whole Operation Warp Speed that sort of speaks to a fundamental lack of understanding of what Operation Warp Speed was trying to accomplish, which is essentially the impossible. So many of us who will vote for Trump if he's the candidate, and obviously it looks like he's going to be the candidate, we're going to vote for Trump because we can see what the opposition is going to be. But we have dissonance and trouble with these things that were missed during the Trump presidency. And if you throw a Vivek Ramaswamy on the ticket, now people like me have a confidence based upon a lot of things that Mr. Ramaswamy has said. Very clearly, you have basically corrected the weaknesses or sort of missteps. You have potentially prevented the same kind of missteps that happened during the Trump presidency because you've given him the right kind of advisor. You've given Trump the right kind of advisor. You've given him somebody who not only can give him advice, but someone that can take orders from Trump because he's aligned with Trump and he can go out and make stuff happen. So Vivek as VP would be a great, absolute slam dunk. I think picking someone like Tulsi Gabbard or somebody who is less clear. We need a bold candidate to be with Trump to increase, not back away from Trump values or soften Trump values that Trump supporters see in Trump. We need someone that strengthens those values and strengthens that set of assumptions about government being too big, about the swamp needing to be drained. That's what we need, not a weak VP. We need an absolute strong VP. We need a historically strong VP so that during a presidency when Trump will turn 80 years old and only be able to serve 4 years, all of us like me can more fully invest in supporting that because we will see on the back end and hope for on the back end an opportunity for Vivek to run as president and give Vivek an opportunity to have a dozen years of influence at the executive level. If we look at what Vivek has written and what he has proven that he stands for over time, it just makes me very hopeful. And one of the things that Vivek says, for example, that makes me hopeful, is he says, look, you can't expect someone to come in here and just be like the Lone Ranger and fix everything from the top. And I think he actually believes that. I think he believes that and knows that he's going to have the people behind him. And that's crucial. It's absolutely essential for this country and the type of government that this country has, a constitutional republic, that the president understands that he presides over an executive branch of government, but that he does not, quote unquote, run the country. That there's no confusion there, right? That we, the people, are supposed to be running this country by paying attention to who's in office and supporting the kind of people that we want to be in office. So I think this analysis that is on the Will Cain Show today is, and I respect these guys. I respect both these gentlemen. I respect their values. I just wanted to say that I think that this analysis is wrong, and that I think people like me, they will absolutely be 100% behind a Trump Ramaswamy ticket. That is a ticket that people like me can believe in when it comes to actually accomplishing the stated goals and the policy goals of these men, of Trump and Ramaswamy. That's my 2 cents. Ramaswamy for VP.